Hi everyone, I'm going to be reading the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time there was a little girl who lived in a village near the forest. Wherever she went, the little girl wore a red riding cloak, so everyone in the village called her Little Red Riding Hood. One morning, Little Red Riding Hood asked her mother if she could visit her grandmother, as it had been a while since she had seen her. "That's a good idea," her mother said, so she packed Little Red Riding Hood a basket to take to her grandmother. When the basket was ready, the little girl put on her red cloak and kissed her mother goodbye. "Remember, go straight to Grandma's house," her mother cautioned. "Don't dawdle, and please don't talk to strangers. The forest can be so dangerous." "Don't worry, Mother," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I'll be very careful." But when Little Red Riding Hood noticed some lovely flowers in the forest, she forgot all about her promise to her mother. She picked a few and watched the butterflies for a while. Little Red Riding Hood was enjoying the summer day so much that she didn't notice the dark shadow approaching behind her in the forest. Suddenly the wolf was beside her. "What are you doing out here, little girl?" the wolf asked in a voice as friendly as he could muster. "I'm on my way to see my grandmother, who lives in the forest near the brook," Little Red Riding Hood replied. Then she realized how late she was and excused herself very quickly to run along to her grandmother's house. The wolf in the meantime took a shortcut. He arrived at grandmother's house a little out of breath from running through the forest. He knocked very lightly on the door. "Oh, thank goodness, my dear. Come in, come in. I was worried sick about you," said grandmother, thinking it was Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf let himself in. Poor Granny did not have time to say another word before she was gobbled up by the wolf. The wolf let out a satisfied burp and then poked through Granny's wardrobe to find a nightgown that he liked. He had added a frilly sleeping cap, just for measure, dabbed some of Granny's perfume behind his pointy ears. A few minutes later, Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. The wolf jumped out of the bed and pulled the covers up to his nose. "Who is it?" he called in a cackly voice. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, how lovely! Do come in, dear, do come in." When Little Red Riding Hood entered the cottage, she could scarcely recognize her grandmother. "Grandmother, your voice sounds so odd. Is something the matter?" she asked. "Oh, I just have a touch of a cold," squeaked the wolf, adding a cough at the end to prove a point. "But, grandmother, what big ears you have," said Little Red Riding Hood as she edged closer to the bed. "The better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "But, grandmother, what big eyes you have," Little Red Riding Hood said. "The better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "But, grandmother, what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Hood, her voice slightly quivering. "The better to eat you with, my dear," roared the wolf, and he leaped out of the bed towards Red Riding Hood. Almost too late, Little Red Riding Hood realized that the person in the bed was not her grandmother, but the hungry wolf instead. A woodsman across the way heard Little Red Riding Hood yelling, "Help! Help! Wolf!" He grabbed the wolf and made him spit out poor grandmother, who was a bit frazzled by the incident. "Oh, grandmother, I was so scared," sobbed Little Red Riding Hood. "I'll never speak to strangers in the forest again. I will never dawdle, I promise." "There, there, child. You've learned a very important lesson today. Thank goodness you shouted loud enough for the kind woodsman to hear you." The woodsman knocked out the wolf and carried him deep into the forest, where he wouldn't bother anybody ever again. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother had a nice lunch and a long chat afterwards. Thank you.